Hey guys, Dr. Cole here doing another video for you on what I believe is going to be one of the most important and popular topics on this channel, because today we're going to be discussing the topics of wheat, gluten, and should you be getting grain into your diet. So look, in the past few years with the epidemic rise in autoimmune diseases, digestive problems, celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, there have been a lot of books that have come out vilifying the consumption of grain and really linking wheat and grain to some of those conditions that we just named there. So as a result, there have been some diets that have been gaining a lot of popularity, like the ketogenic diet and like the paleo diet, where the idea there is if we get grains out of our diet and focus more on high amounts of healthy fat, quality meats, and plant-based foods like vegetables and fruits, that is going to allow our bodies to heal. And I will tell you, I 100% agree with that line of thinking. And I myself will put patients on a plant-based ketogenic type diet. Take the grains out of their diet and allow their body to heal. But at the same time, I will also tell you that I love consuming grain in my own diet. I love bread, I love pasta, and I do consume wheat too. So what's the difference? Am I contradicting myself, or is there something we need to discuss here today? Well, as we get into this, I will tell you there's a major difference between things called ancient grains that have never been genetically modified and have never been hybridized, and some of the modern grains that we're eating today that cause so many of the health issues that we just named a little bit earlier. To break this topic down, it is important to understand and to discuss the difference between hybridization and genetic modification. And look, I'm not going to get overly technical or too scientific in today's video, but you do have to understand both those so you can understand what's been done to the plants and the crops and the foods we're eating too. So, to start off with hybridization. When they hybridize a plant, it means that they've crossbred certain plants together, and sometimes even wild grasses with these wheat plants, to produce certain characteristics and traits in that plant. However, all the genes in that plant still come from the same plant species. So they'll make DNA changes, but it's still all from the same types of plant species. Genetic modification means that they've taken a plant and they've inserted foreign genes into that plant. The difference in both scenarios here would be like, let's use hybridization first. In Myrtle Beach, there's an exhibit there where you can go see this cool wild cat called a liger. A liger is made by crossing, really mating, a tiger and a lion together. You mate a lion and a tiger, you get this big cat called a liger. It's a different end product, but all the genes are still feline genes. They're still from the cat family. Genetic modification would be if you took a lion or a tiger and you inserted canine or dog genes into that cat. So that's the difference there. Genetic modification is foreign genes inserted in. Hybridization is messing with the genes by crossbreeding plants together to get certain traits, and that's what's been done to the wheat. Now, if we talk about GMO for a minute, there are a lot of crops that have been genetically modified. Things like corn, soybeans, canola oil, alfalfa, cotton, all those are some of the big GMO crops. And when they genetically modify a crop, like corn for example, you can spray an herbicide on it called glyphosate. Now, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. Just like someone may go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy Roundup to spray their driveway weeds, which I hope you're not, but the active ingredient in that is called glyphosate. So Roundup Ready corn is corn that has been genetically modified so that glyphosate can be sprayed over that corn, but the corn will continue to live. Only the weeds will die. Yet when you consume that corn, you're getting all the residue of that glyphosate in your body. So when we talk about wheat plants, wheat has been hybridized, meaning that in the 1960s, they started crossbreeding certain wheat plants and wild grasses together to create the form of wheat today that causes so many of the issues that we see digestive-wise and gluten sensitivity too. Wheat used to be a very simple plant to break down, and contrary to what a lot of these diets tell you, like the paleo diet, that we weren't meant to be eating wheat and that people never ate grain thousands of years ago, that's completely false. You know, ancient cultures lived off of wheat. They lived off of grains. Read the Bible. Look at ancient cultures like Babylon and Greece and Mesopotamia. These people farmed, they grew a lot of wheat and grains, and they lived off of those things in periods of drought and famine. So it was a big staple of their dietary and agricultural lifestyle back then. Even as recently as before the 1960s, wheat was very simple to break down. It was a couple chromosomes, It was not full of the gluten that we see today, and the type of gluten in ancient forms of wheat contained a protein called type A proteins. When they started hybridizing wheat in the 1960s, they didn't take into account what would happen to it digestibility-wise and gluten sensitivity. And the reason for hybridizing it was like for anything: better yield, more profits. Wheat used to grow on very tall stalks. It was only a couple chromosomes, so it was very easy to break down. And it contained a type of protein called type A. It contained a type of gluten that had a protein in it called type A. So type A proteins in that gluten. It was not reactive to our body. When they started hybridizing wheat and they formed this wheat called dwarf wheat, they did it because it's easier now to ride a tractor over that wheat. It's easier to harvest, and because the plant doesn't grow as tall, more of that plant's energy can go into producing more seeds, so a better yield from that plant. What happened to it from a digestibility standpoint is the chromosomes increased significantly, so way more complex and complicated for your body to break down. But also the gluten concentrations went through the roof, and the types of gluten as well contains an allergenic type protein called protein type D. So the gluten that we're eating today, why so many people react to it, is because it has a different protein composition than the ancient types of wheat did. And look, if it only stopped there, we still probably wouldn't have the issues with wheat that we do today. I've never been overseas, but I've had patients who have been to areas like France and Italy, and they'll go to Rome, and they'll come back and say, "Doc, I had the bread and the pasta and the pizza over there, and it didn't do near the things to me as when I eat those foods in America. I didn't have digestive problems or joint pain or brain fog. I felt great." Why is that the case with the grains we're eating here in America? Because not only has our wheat plants been hybridized, but they've also undergone a lot of chemical mutations to the wheat plants themselves too. So in 2003, this is a study done online, 2003, a chemical company called BASF, they're the largest chemical production company in the world, you guys. They created a form of wheat called Clearfield wheat. Now, I discussed GMOs in the beginning because Clearfield wheat and Roundup Ready corn are very similar. Roundup Ready corn is corn that's been genetically modified to be able to withstand being sprayed with glyphosate, and the corn will still live. Well, Clearfield wheat by the company BASF is a type of wheat that can sustain being sprayed with an herbicide called Beyond. They spray this herbicide called Beyond onto the wheat, yet the wheat won't die. Now, there's connections between these companies, BASF, Bayer, and Monsanto. So Bayer owns Monsanto. Monsanto is the company that GMOs a lot of the foods in America. That company BASF, they're located over in Germany. Bayer, just last year, 2018, sold BASF the rights to the genetically modified lineups of the soybean lines, the vegetable oil, and the canola oil too. So these companies, a lot of them interconnect. BASF, being the largest chemical production company in the world, how this whole process works with the Clearfield wheat and how it can sustain being sprayed by that herbicide Beyond is they take the wheat seeds and they expose it to they go through this process called chemical mutagenesis. That sounds really healthy for us, right? So they say, look, no, this wheat's not genetically modified. It's still hybridized, but we take it through a process called chemical mutagenesis. And if you look up what that means and what they've done to this wheat, they'll take the wheat seeds, they expose it to a toxic chemical called sodium azide. Extremely toxic. I mean, if someone's been exposed to it, you can't even be near that person. It's very carcinogenic, and it's one of the most lethal toxins known to man, sodium azide. If that wasn't enough, they also take those wheat seeds and then they expose it to gamma and X-ray radiation. You can't make this up, you guys. So chemical mutagenesis, they mutate the genes in the wheat plant by exposing it to sodium azide, gamma, and X-ray radiation, and that mutated gene in the wheat plant can now survive being sprayed with Germany's version of glyphosate, that Beyond herbicide that I talked about. You guys, this is exactly why so many people in America today cannot tolerate wheat. That's why you have the joint pain, the brain fog, the digestive inability, the bloating, the inability to sleep and think clearly. All of these are not because gluten or grains are bad for us. It's what we've done to these plants. I always try to have my patients go back to common sense type things. You know, what did our ancestors eat? What were people eating in the Bible? What does the Bible say about these plants? If people consume these things for thousands of years, now all of a sudden, what's the problem? The problem is what we're doing to these plants. So what's the answer, and what's the type of ancient grains I was talking about that I like to eat? Well, the most ancient type of wheat that's never been genetically modified, never been hybridized, and it's the same way that they grew in Egypt over 5,000 years ago, is called einkorn wheat. Einkorn is a German name, E-I-N-K-O-R-N. Einkorn means single grain. Ein means single corn grain. So it's never been hybridized, never been mixed with different plants. It's a single grain form of wheat. Instead of being very full of empty carbohydrates and making you feel sick and bloated when you're done eating it like regular pasta or grain, this is very protein rich. It's very protein dense. It fills you up, but in a good way, not where you're tired or need a nap afterwards. So protein dense, fills you up good, very, very simple for your body to break down. Molecularly, the chromosomes, and there's very few chromosomes, the type of gluten in it is the type A proteins that we talked about that are non-reactive, and it doesn't contain hyper concentrations of gluten too. So we buy this from a company called Jovial. This is the flour that they sell. There's also crackers and 2 forms of pasta, so penne noodles and linguine noodles. Now, if you're one of my patients who live in the Greensburg area here, we do buy these at Nature's Way, and I've seen them at Wegmans up in Erie, Pennsylvania as well. However, if you're not in this area, if you're watching this outside of the state, you can buy this online too. Now, does this mean that any patient, regardless of their health, is fine eating einkorn? No, I'll tell you, I would definitely want to know more about that patient's health history. I told you at the beginning, I like the ketogenic diet, and I will take and put clients on there if their case calls for it. So if a person is autoimmune, if they're celiac, if they want to lose weight, those are all conditions where maybe even the ancient grains we have to take a little bit of a rest from. But as your body heals and as your digestive system heals and we're losing weight, we can start tolerating these foods again. On the note of the weight aspect, if we want to lose weight, we still have to get off of foods that are going to be contributing to glucose in our body. So the more grains you eat, the higher your glucose gets, the higher your insulin levels get, and insulin stores fat on our body. So if you want to lose weight, still limit the grains. But if you're at a healthy weight and you have good digestion and you're not have celiac or autoimmune disease, switch over to the einkorn. You won't believe how good it tastes and how good you feel eating this too. Other ancient grains that I'm not going to cover in detail in this video, but that we do eat as well, include spelt, millet, buckwheat, barley, and amaranth. So spelt, millet, buckwheat, barley, amaranth. You want to find non-GMO, ancient, organic versions of those grains too. And so if we're getting these ancient grains in, not every day. I won't tell you I have these things every single day in my life, but a couple of times a week, a couple of times a month, get these foods in. Your body's designed to break those foods down. So look, I hope this video was helpful. Like and share this content. There are so many people that need to hear this because they don't understand the reason for why they're sick. They don't understand what the grains they're eating are doing to their body and what's been done to the grains that makes them so sick. So subscribe to our channel, like and share this. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.